Hi, dancers. If you can hear me, give a thumbs up. Awesome. We'll wait a couple more minutes. I know we're still waiting for people to come in. I see some familiar faces, some new faces. Nice to see all of you. We'll give it one more minute. Actually, while we're waiting, as people come in, I'm just going to go over some of the tools that we're going to use today. So if you have them, make sure you have them by you. If you don't, I'm going to show modifications for if you do not. So if you have a ball, either a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, make sure you have that with you. If you have a foot roller, it could be wooden, it could be plastic. Should go over. Might look something like this. If you have that, go ahead and get it. If you have a large foam roller, go get your foam roller. And if you have a massage stick or a rolling pin, make sure you have that by you. And if you don't, no worries. So let's go ahead and get started. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Naomi Sailors. I'm the ballet master here at the New Ballet. I'm also a professional dancer with Menlo Ballet, and I'm a former studio company dancer with the New Ballet. So today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be teaching you some ways that you can take care of your body while you're going throughout the summer intensive, and also after the summer intensive for the rest of your dancing life. All these things that we're talking about are things that I have experimented with and have worked for me. I want to start this off by saying that everybody's body is different. So some of these things may work for you or they may not work for you. This is sort of a time to experiment and see what feels good, what doesn't, what is helpful, what isn't. So just keep that in mind, that some of these things you may feel a big difference, and for some of these things, they might not work for you, and that's okay. So I just am curious, how many of you warm up before class? There's no right or wrong answer. Some people a little bit. How many of you have ever used a foam roller or a rolling stick or done any kind of rolling before? A few people. All right, awesome. And how many of you stretch before class? Some people, yeah. How many of you stretch after class? A few people, yeah. So when you're warming up for class or cooling down after class, there's some different ways we want to approach that because our body changes from the beginning of class to the end of class. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is the concept of pliability. So everybody is familiar with the concept of flexibility and range of motion, right? So if you're really flexible, you can go into really big stretches. You can maybe have your leg way up high. Your body is very open. And that's different from pliability. Pliability is how long it takes your body to get into your full range of motion. So for some people, your full range of motion may be way out here. But if you're not very pliable, until you stretch and roll or do something to kind of warm up your body, your range of motion might be right here with your legs. Now, for me, I'm not a very pliable person. My pliability is very low. So while my range of flexibility is pretty good when I'm warm, when I'm not warm, when I haven't spent time rolling out, doing something for my body, my range is actually pretty small. So I'm going to show you, not warm, what my range looks like in the middle splits. This is my full range of motion when I'm not warm. It's not very wide. This is my full range of motion stretching forward. not warm. It's not very far. But when I'm warm, my range of motion is drastically different. So for some of you that are struggling with flexibility, it may actually be that you're not flexible. It may just be that you're not pliable. So rolling is kind of going to help figure out whether you're very flexible but not pliable, or whether you are very flexible and pliable, or maybe you're very pliable and not flexible, and it's going to kind of help you figure out um, where your body is with that, and then we're going to talk about what you can do in each of those situations. So, I want everybody right now to test your range of motion in some simple stretches. So, right now, let's start by testing hamstring. So everybody just go ahead, flex your feet and test your hamstring reach. It looks like they're having some technical difficulties. Okay, everybody hear me okay? We're good? I'm frozen. Can everybody hear me but not see me? Can't hear the sound very well. Okay. Let me try one thing. Hang tight, everybody. I will be right back. Can everybody hear me from this machine? Can everybody hear me from this machine? Okay, this is better for everyone? Awesome, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. So, there we go. Okay, so you guys probably missed some of my introduction, so I will just go over some of it again. Basically, right now, the concept that we're talking about is flexibility versus pliability. So if you're somebody who is very flexible, but not very pliable, it's going to take you a long time to get warm and find your range of motion. So what we're going to do right now is kind of a little test to see for you personally if your body is very pliable, very flexible, inflexible but pliable, what combination of that, and then how we can sort of warm up and take care of our bodies based on that. So I want everybody right now to start by testing their hamstring range. So just go ahead and stretch forward and then test it pointing your toes, stretching forward. Now I want you all to test one side and go ahead and test the other side. Now go ahead and test both legs, your range here, how far you can go forward, how wide your legs go, and I want you to pay attention to how you feel. Go ahead and switch to pigeon, test your range there. This doesn't need to be a long stretch. I just want you to see how your body feels in these stretches. And I want you to notice whether you feel tight in some places, loose in some places. When you've done that, stretch a lunge. Make sure you get both sides. And then stand up, test the range of your calves in a calf stretch. Make sure you get both sides. And then I want you to test the range of flexibility in your feet, because that's what we're going to be focusing on today, starting with the lower body. So test your demi point and test your ankle. Demi point and ankle. Calves, and then go ahead and bend your back calf and test the range of your Achilles tendon. See how that feels. Sorry, I'm just going to fix a couple things here. There we go. Okay, now I can see more of you. So now that we've tested our range of motion, I want a show of hands from people. I know you guys have had class before today. So how many people feel like they were more flexible right now than they were at the beginning of the day? Some people. How many people feel the same? Feel the same amount of flexibility as they did at the beginning of the day? All right, so for some of you who have taken class, sometimes when you take class, your body gets more flexible by the end of class. Sometimes your body has retains the same amount of range flexibility. For some people, you actually start at the beginning of class more flexible, and by the end of class, you're a little bit tighter. And that's what happens for me. So that's just something that's good to notice and keep in mind. So the first thing we're gonna do is we are going to start rolling out, massaging our feet. Because when you start with your feet and then work your way up, you tend to get warmer faster and stay warmer longer. I don't know why this is, but this is something that I have experimented with and it always works every time. So if you have, actually, we're just gonna start with our hands. So this is how I start every day before class, warming up my feet. So I might actually bring you guys in a little bit closer so that way you can see. This is something that is kind of small. So what we're gonna do is you can do this with just your hands, or if you want, you can use arnica cream or massage oil. That kind of helps you slide a little bit more. But the first thing we're gonna target is the inside arch of our foot. So if you do a lot of jumping, a lot of point work, a lot of releves, anything where you're using your feet, this gets kind of tight. And a tight muscle is a weak muscle. So we want to make sure our muscles stay really strong by keeping them very loose. So I want you guys to just go ahead and start massaging from sort of the base of the heel to the metatarsal. And if you don't have massage oil, this can be a little bit difficult. So I like to use a little bit of arnica, and it slides a little bit more. So arch of the foot, this is where you get foot cramps sometimes if you dance for too long. The next thing we're gonna massage, this is pretty simple. You just go along the base of the foot. And for any kind of massage that you do, it's always better to be a little bit too gentle rather than a little bit too harsh. Because if you are too aggressive right away and really get in there, you risk bruising your muscles. And then it kind of hurts for a few days. So start gentle, and then if you feel like you need more pressure, you can go in a little bit deeper. That's something that you should be able to feel pretty easily. The next thing we're gonna massage is sort of the inside of the foot. So we've just done the arch, sort of the outside line. Now we're gonna do the inside, right along the middle. And for this, I usually use a little bit less pressure than the arch. It doesn't need as much. And from there, you can move to the very outside portion of the foot. This usually needs the least amount of massage, but for some people it can get a little bit tight. So you wanna make sure that you're massaging all parts of your foot to keep it loose. And then just go ahead and finish that off. So the next part of our foot that we're gonna look at massaging is around the Achilles tendon. So this is really good if you get tendonitis, to kind of keep the muscles around the tendon loose so that there's the least amount of gripping here. So you can see where there's kind of like a little dimple in your foot right under the ankle bone and before the Achilles tendon. Right in here can get really, really tight. So it's kind of nice to just massage a little bit from the top of the ankle downwards. You could also go upwards, but I usually find that going downwards feels a little bit better. You can do the same thing on the outside of the foot, just with your fingers going up right behind the ankle bone. And this helps keep that area nice and loose. So when you've done that, let's go ahead and, actually before we move to our other foot, go ahead and give yourself a really gentle stretch. So putting your finger in the arch of your foot right here, you're just gonna kind of pull gently, and so your ankle along the top gets a stretch. This is just very gentle. And then once you've done that, go ahead and pull your toes back. Stretch your demi point. And then as the last thing, flex your foot, pinch right here, and kind of pull this downwards. That gives your Achilles a little gentle stretch. So now I want everybody to stand up, oops, now that we've done that. And I want you to compare the range in both of your feet. For some of you, this might make a big difference. For some of you, it might make not much of a difference. But I want you to test your demi point and your ankle range on the foot that you just stretched out. And then compare how it feels on the other foot. For some of you, it might feel a lot more loose, a lot more open. For some of you, it might feel exactly the same. Just go ahead and test that. Okay. Who feels a difference? Yeah, some of you feel a difference, and some of you don't. So for the people who feel a difference, that means that you probably have a little bit more, a little bit less pliability, which means it takes you a little bit longer to warm up. And for those of you that didn't feel a difference, you probably have a little bit more pliability, so it doesn't take you as long to unlock your range. So now, for people who have massage tools, if you have a foot roller, go ahead and get your foot roller out. And this is pretty straightforward. You pretty much just roll along the arch of your foot. And roll out all the muscles, especially paying attention to the inside because that tends to get the most tight. The other thing you can do is take a ball, lacrosse ball, tennis ball, either works. And you're going to put your foot over the ball and kind of let your foot almost dome around the outside of the ball. So it's like the bones are kind of like melting over the side of the ball. So this is like right under the metatarsal. You can put a little bit of weight on it. You can roll back and forth, but what I actually like to do is roll side to side very gently, because what this does is it kind of spreads the bones a little bit. And it also helps you get all the tiny little muscles in the bottom and the top of your foot between the bones. It helps loosen them up a little bit. So now, what I want you to do is, for the people who had a roller or ball, test the range in that foot that you just rolled out again and see if there's a bigger difference. And then go ahead and compare it to the foot that hasn't been rolled out yet. Does anybody feel more of a difference now that they've rolled out? Some people it's kind of the same. Yeah, it's very, very individual. Let's go ahead and do the other foot, just to be even. It's always good to be even. So starting again, if you have massage cream, you can use massage cream. If you don't, you can just use your hands. And go ahead and start massaging the arch of your foot. What some of you guys may know, and some of you guys may not know, is that the flexibility in your feet and calves actually has an effect on the flexibility in the rest of your body. So if you struggle with the splits or other really big stretches, most people are going to think that's hamstrings, right? That's the quads, that's the hips. Actually, it starts with your calves and feet, because your calves are connected through the back of your knee to your hamstrings. Your feet are connected to your calves. Your entire body is connected, which means that if one part of your body is tight, it can have an effect on the rest of your body and how that works. So go ahead and move to the middle of your foot. And when you're ready, move to the outside of your foot. If you find that you have trouble with your hands sliding, you can also wear a sock. Sometimes that's a little bit uncomfortable, but sometimes the sock gives you a little bit more slide along the feet. And then when you're done with that, go ahead and move to the area around the Achilles tendon. You can do both at once by pinching either side of your Achilles tendon, or you can just focus on the inside first and then move to the outside. Up to you. Another thing we often forget is that flexibility actually has an effect on how much strength we have in our muscles. So if you think about how you use your muscles, you contract them and then you release them. When they're contracted, they're engaged, they're strong. When they're released, they're relaxed. So if your muscles are tight, they're already partially contracted, which means that then when you go to use them, you don't have as much of a contraction that you can access. It's just half. You only have maybe half of what you had before. So when your muscles are loose, they're actually stronger, which is kind of counterintuitive because sometimes you think, oh, if I'm tighter, I'm stronger. It's actually not true. The looser you are, the stronger you're going to be. And loose does not necessarily mean flexible. Loose is, you know, if your muscles are soft, if your muscles are relaxed, whereas flexibility is kind of more of how much range you have when your muscles are loose and relaxed. So once you've done that, go ahead and just stretch your foot gently from the arch. You can kind of press along the top of your foot if you want to stretch your ankle. And then if you have your foot roller, go ahead and switch to that. If you don't, you can keep stretching your foot. You can keep massaging your foot. Whatever you feel like you want to do. And then when you're ready, tennis ball. Go ahead and spread the foot over the tennis ball and you can roll it back and forth along the outside. And now go ahead and just gently stretch, test your range, see how that feels. See if it feels better, if it feels worse, if it feels the same, and just make a mental note. Awesome. Okay, so let's sit back down again. So the next muscle group that we're going to focus on is our calves. So calves and feet kind of go together. When you jump, you're using both your calves and your feet, hopefully equally. If we have some muscle imbalances, then usually one will work more than the other, and that's when we kind of get a little bit tight or something gets a little bit sore. So we want to make sure that both are rolled out and nice and loose. So if you're doing point work too, it's a lot of work for your calves. Any kind of releve, jumps especially, are really hard on your calves. So I actually find that calves are, for me, one of the most important things to focus on. So again, we're going to start with self-massage with our hands. So this one, you're just going to take the palm of your hand and you're going to rub from the bottom to the top of the belly of your calf. This sort of like really big muscular part of your calf. That's what we're working on right now. And again, if you have a massage oil, this usually helps a little bit more. This can be kind of difficult to do with just your hands. If you find that this is too difficult, another thing you can do is just grab and sort of knead that area with your hands all along the calf. And this really helps get it loose. Another thing to keep in mind is that some people need more work on their body before class, and some people need more work on their body after class. So you may not need to do all of this before class, but you may find that it's really helpful after class. So something I encourage you to do is to experiment tomorrow, next week, just whenever you have time, pick a day and see if rolling out your muscles, working on them before class helps, and then pick another day and see if working on them after class helps. And once we've done that, we're going to move to the outside of our calf. This one is a little bit hard to target. So we're working on this muscle right along the outside. Sort of, I guess it connects to the tendon that is right by the ankle bone. And this gets really, really tight when you start doing a lot of point work or when you're working on shaping your lines. Because if we're winging our foot or sort of shaping the foot, this is the muscle that we're using the most. So it can tend to get very, very tight. So again, going from the bottom to the top of the muscle, having a massage oil or cream really, really helps with this. And if that isn't working, just go ahead and knead the muscle. To loosen it up. You can use both hands, you can use one hand. We're not going to spend too much time on this. So for some people, you may want to just try at home and see if this works better when you practice for longer, practice the massage for longer. All very individual. So last muscle area that we're going to be focusing on is sort of the one in the middle. So right along the back of your calf, you can massage going all the way up, or again, you can just kind of knead it with your hands. This becomes a lot easier to do when you have a massage stick or a rolling pin, but using your hands also works. So we're gonna go ahead and just leave that calf. And again, I want you all to stand up and test your range in a calf stretch and see if it feels tighter, if it feels looser. You may be able to go further, and test your Achilles as well when you have your leg bent. Just go ahead and do a quick test. And then we're gonna sit back down again. Now, if you have a massage stick or a rolling pin, this is the time to go get it. Now, make sure that your rolling pin is not one that you're going to be baking with, because it is going to get all sweaty. So for this one, I like to either massage downwards. Some people massage upwards. Both work, whatever feels better for your body. Make sure that you're not pressing too hard and too aggressively to start. Start gentle. And then if you feel like you need more, you can work your way back up. You can also go back and forth along the calf. But this is very, very helpful. And it's a really easy way to sort of help you roll. So right now we're focusing on the inside part of the calf. And for a modification, if you have a big foam roller and you do not have a stick, you can also roll this by turning your leg in and rolling on the inside of your calf. I usually like the stick for this though, because I can control the pressure a little bit more. And now let's go ahead and move to the outside of the leg. So here, especially be gentle, because this muscle tendon combination is very sensitive. So if you go too hard, you risk bruising it. So make sure you're being gentle, you're listening to your body, you're paying attention to what it needs and what feels good and what doesn't. And if something just does not feel good, you don't have to do it. This is about helping your body recover and making it feel better. So if something just feels wrong, if it feels like you're injuring it, absolutely do not do it. And now let's go ahead and move to the very back of the calf. And I forgot to show the modification for if you have a foam roller, this one you just turn out your leg. So you're getting the outside of the calf. That's how you do that. And for this one, right along the back of the leg. And usually right along the back does not need as much massage for some reason as the inside and the outside. I don't know why. That's just for me. For you, you may find that you actually need more right in the middle. It all depends on your body. Again, if you have the foam roller, you can go right along the outside or the middle. So now go ahead and stand up and test your range one more time and see if that's made a difference. For me, that's made a big difference. I don't know how many of you can tell, but I feel a huge difference. Before, I was right about here with my range, and now I can go a lot further back. So for me, rolling makes a huge difference. Let's go ahead and work on our other leg so that we're even. Actually, go ahead and test your other leg first and see if you feel a difference. feel a difference between the two legs. For some of you, you might feel a big difference, you might feel a small difference, you might feel no difference. And all of it is fine. It just depends on your body and what it needs. So now let's go ahead and work on our other leg. So again, starting with massaging the calf. And of course, when you're putting together a warm-up routine or a cool-down routine or something that will help your body, you don't have to do every single one of these things. Maybe you find that the foam roller works really well for you, so you just foam roll, or maybe you find that the stick works well for you and you just use that, or maybe you just massage, or maybe you use a foot roller on your feet and then massage your calves. It's all very, very personal. So whatever feels like it's working for you is what you should be doing. And let's go ahead and move to the outside. You can also kind of play with how you massage your calves. And regardless of whether you're trying to gain more flexibility or whether you're already really flexible, it's really, really good to keep your muscles loose and to get them warm before you dance and help them cool down after you dance, because it's just really, really healthy for them. If they're tight all the time, even if you have a great range of motion, you're at risk for muscle pulls, muscle tears, and so it's just really good idea for the health of your muscles and joints to keep them nice and loose. So go ahead and work on the back. And then let's go ahead and move to our other tools. So if you have a stick, now it's the time to use your stick. And when you feel like you've done enough with your stick or your foam roller, go ahead and move to the outside. And when you've done enough of that, go ahead and move to the back of your calf. And again, you want to have a little bit of pressure, but you don't want to be too aggressive because you might bruise your muscles. So make sure you're paying attention to what is working for you. And now let's go ahead and stand up and test our range of motion. See how it feels. Straight. Switch legs. Compare the two. Usually we have one tighter leg and one looser leg. That is perfectly normal. And now go ahead and test the range of your feet and see if that feels any different than earlier. For some of you it may, for some of you it may not. For me, it makes a very big difference to how much range I have in pointing my feet, whether my calves are loose or not, because calves take some of the work. All right, so now what I want everybody to do is I want you to test your range in the stretches that we did before. So the hamstring stretch that we did before, see if that made a difference. For some of you, maybe yes. For some of you, maybe no. I'm gonna put this back here. And then test your range to the side. And test your range to the other side. Test your range in the pigeon stretch. And the other side pigeon stretch. Test your range in your lunge. And test the range in your lunge the other way. And test your range finally in side splits. So now I'm just really curious. Raise your hand if you felt a difference in the hamstring stretch. I did. Raise your hands if you felt a difference in the side stretch. No, I did. Raise your hands if you felt a difference in the pigeon stretch. A few people, that one I did not. So see, it's very, very different. For some people, yes. For some people, no. And raise your hand if you felt a difference in your straddle stretch. Yeah, some of you. So again, this is kind of illustrates that this is all very, very individual. And for some people, rolling makes a big difference, and for some people, it doesn't. So with the time we have left, we actually have a lot of time. I'm going to show some more in-depth modifications of things that you can do, and then maybe we'll spend a little bit of time on another muscle group. But we have 4 of these classes, and so we're sort of breaking down all of the big muscle groups into the different classes. We actually can do a few exercises for feet as well, but first I'm going to show a couple more things you can do if you have extra tools. So I'm going to bring this back. And then at some point I will open the floor for questions if you have specific questions. So if you have a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball and you are very, very, very tight in your calves. Let's say you've been jumping for a really long time, you're on point, and nothing you do seems to loosen up your calves. What might actually be really tight is not this big belly of the muscle area, it might be the area under, right here. So one way to target that is to take a tennis ball. A lacrosse ball is usually a little bit hard, so you might want to start with a tennis ball, and right where the belly of your muscle meets sort of the base, you roll it back and forth. And for this, again, not too much pressure because this is pretty intense. And for some of you, if you have a tight muscle on the outside, you might feel it almost like flip. It kind of sticks. So if you watch my muscle, it goes pop. That means that muscle is really tight and I want to roll along that muscle. So if you find a muscle where, or an area of your muscle where it kind of sticks, that area is probably super, super tight, and you want to pay attention to the vertical, the way the muscle goes vertically, as opposed to horizontally, where it kind of encompasses several muscles. So that was another thing I actually want to talk about is when I roll, I like to think about 3 lines of the body. This is not how our bodies are built anatomically because we have muscles that overlap and tendons that attach. But when you're rolling, it's really helpful to think about the outside line, the middle line, and then the inside line. So for me, on my body, this outside line is very tight. So I need to roll along the outside line to loosen that up. For some people, maybe your middle line is very tight, so you want to roll along there. Or for some people, it's the inside. So it's all very, very individual. You can also try the other side. If you like this, you can actually see better on my leg, here's where the belly of my calf ends, and here is where the rest of my calf begins. And so I put the tennis ball right under there, and I just roll it side to side. And this can be very helpful or not, depending on how your body is feeling. Another thing is sometimes you can get specialized massage tools and you're not in any way required to use these to get the kind of massage you want, but sometimes it can be a little helpful. So I have this tool, it looks like a wooden doorknob, and I use this actually to massage the inside so that my fingers don't get tired. So that's something, if you have that lying around the house, it's actually really helpful to get the area around the Achilles tendon. For this, like wooden or plastic is better to use. I would not recommend metal. That can be a little bit harsh. And another thing, if your feet are really, really tight and they sort of feel gristly when you roll them out, is you can use a spiky ball. Be careful with this because it is spiky and a lot of pressure and you don't want to bruise anything. But this really, really helps if you feel sort of like almost grit when you try to roll out your feet. So what I want to do next is I want everybody to come close to their computers, and I'm gonna ask a couple questions. And these are not right or wrong answers. This is what you think would help you in a situation. So let's say that you spent a whole class jumping and your calves are really, really, really tight and you want to make them loose. Let's say that specifically this part of your calf, the belly of your calf is really tight. I want everybody to just type in what you think you could do to make it loose again. Massage with hands, absolutely. Massage with hands or roll out. Use a rolling stick. Roll out middle section, good. Massage. Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, all of these things are absolutely correct in different ways. And I'm gonna give you an extra little tip that goes along with that. Yes, and actually Ada has a very good point. So if one area of your body is tight, sometimes it's actually other areas around your body that are contributing to that. So if maybe just this feels tight, you probably also want to massage along the middle line too, because this could be having an effect on the muscle next to it. So a good thing to do after you've rolled out a little bit is very gently stretch it. So this isn't a really big, like I'm trying to get more flexible, my calves kind of stretch, but this is more like, let's say you've massaged it, you've rolled it, and then you just kind of test your range of motion. You can even kind of move through it. So this is not a stretch where you want it to be static. Static stretches are where you hold and you hold and you hold. And those are good sometimes. We need static stretches to help us increase our range of motion. But we want a dynamic stretch where maybe you hold it for a couple seconds and then you come out of it. And you hold for a couple seconds and you come out of it. And what that's doing is that is helping signal your body to just release that tension and your body relaxed. Because if you just roll out and then do absolutely nothing, sometimes your body starts going back into that tense mode where it was before. Whereas if you give it a little bit of stretch, it tends to hold just a little bit longer. In another situation, let's say that you have a foot cramp. What are you gonna do if you have a foot cramp? In any part of your foot. Massage. This one I'm looking for a little bit more specific things. Massage the arch. Roll out the part that's cramping and around. Good. These are all good things to do. The other thing that we're missing so far. Yeah, these are all great things, you guys. I can see you've all been paying attention. The other thing to do is if your foot is cramping, look at if your calf is not working because it's tight. So if you're massaging out your feet because they're cramping, also see if you need some work on your calves too, because usually they kind of go hand in hand. So if this is cramping in here, it probably means that this is not doing enough work because it's either partially contracted and it's already tight, or something else is going on. But yeah, very good. Roll it out with a ball, massage with your hands, all great things, you guys. So now one other situation. Yeah. Let's say that your hamstrings feel very tight, but you've massaged them out and they don't seem to be getting any better. What part of the body would you work on next to see if you can get more range in your hamstrings? Good, you guys. Yeah, absolutely. It's the calves. Or glutes. Yep, we'll get to that next week. Awesome. Yeah. So now I want to teach you guys a few stretches. This is more for people who need to increase their range of motion, whether you're flexible or pliable or not. So how many of you struggle with flexibility in class and keeping it throughout class? And how many of you are generally pretty flexible in class? Yeah, so it's kind of half and half. So this is a little bit more for people who need to increase range of motion, but this is also a way for people who are already pretty flexible to warm up, stretch out in a little bit safer way. So the order in which we stretch things actually has a little bit of an effect on how much range we have. So if you start stretching, well, usually actually the way I like to do it is I roll from the bottom up and then stretch from the bottom down. So I roll out my feet, roll out my calves, roll out my hamstrings, roll out my quads, roll out my hips, roll out my glutes, and then I stretch hips and glutes, quads, calves, or hamstrings, calves, all the way down. But if you want to skip that, you can actually, and for some people it also works to stretch from the bottom up. So we're gonna start with our feet. These are some things that you can do before class, after class, usually before class, to help you get a little bit more range and sort of stretch safely. So how many of you, okay, actually, this is a better question first. So I know some of you stretch before class and I know some of you stretch after class or during class. Raise of hands if the only stretches you do are the splits and the middle splits. Good. That should not be the first thing that you're stretching. Who stretches their calves before class? Few people. Who does a foot stretch before class? Few people. Who does a hamstring stretch? And who does a butterfly stretch? Almost everybody, yeah. Butterfly is actually one of the best things to do before class because it's very gentle. But the point being is you should not ever start your stretching routine with big stretches because you could pull a muscle. Sorry, there's a lot of bugs out here. So you want to start with the small stretches and then work your way up to the bigger stretches. So if we're going to start by stretching our feet, that's a pretty small stretch to begin with. It's pretty safe. So if you have a foot stretcher, obviously you can use that. If you don't though, there's kind of a couple different areas of your foot that you want to stretch. You do want to stretch your arch, you want to stretch your ankle, and you actually want to stretch this front part of the foot because that has an effect on how much your foot can arch. I don't have a lot of range in my feet, especially when I don't stretch them. So I have to pay attention to all areas of my feet. For some people with very flexible feet, you might not need to do this as much and be very gentle. And then another thing we really want to stretch too is our demi point, because that has an effect on how much we can roll away. So let's actually start. We're going to go back to the first stretch that we did. When you put your thumb in your arch, think about pulling your foot. This is hard for you guys to see, I'm sorry. You don't want to just bend it. You want to think about pulling it out and away. So it's like you're almost curving your foot over your thumb. It goes out and away. And this is going to help you stretch the top part of your foot also. So it's out and over because it's making your foot long instead of just short, if that makes sense. So you can do that, and then make sure you're not letting your foot sickle when you're stretching. Keep it in a nice shaped position. And then to stretch more of your ankle than your arch, you can grab a little bit closer to your ankle and pull it out and down. This is sometimes a two-hand stretch. And this is pretty gentle. Out and down. And then to stretch the front part of your foot, this is a little bit difficult, and sometimes you can have a partner help you with this. If you have a ball, what you can do is, and a partner, your partner will push your foot sort of over the ball so you get a little bit more of a stretch that way. But if you do not have a partner with you, which I know most of us don't, right under your metatarsal, you feel where this big knuckle bone is and where that ends. Right under there, think again about pulling out. So out this way and then down. And it's just a gentle little stretch for that front part of your foot. Out and down. Then, if you want to stretch your demi point, easiest way is to just sit on one knee and gently push over the foot. Be careful not to overstretch or to crunch too much in the Achilles, because that can hurt. But you're just trying to feel a stretch along the arch and the metatarsal. And whenever you do this stretch, you want to counter it by doing an Achilles stretch, because that just crunched your Achilles right there. So this, you stretch over. And you can kind of pull on your calf a little bit for extra support if you need to. And you can go back and forth between the two, stretching this one and stretching this one. But we don't want to spend too much time in either one stretch because it'll overstretch or crunch. One of the biggest keys to stretching is to always do a counter stretch for something. So if you're stretching out your ball of your foot and your Achilles tendon is crunched, you need to do the counter stretch to make the Achilles tendon long again. That makes sense. If you're stretching your foot this way, then you always want to stretch the demi point so that it's flexible both ways. This goes for any kind of stretch. You always want to stretch both ways. So again, calf stretch is really simple. You guys all know how to do a calf stretch. But here, when you're stretching the calf, you also want to stretch the calf this way because it's giving you your counter stretch. That is it, what I have for you guys. So we have a couple minutes left and I want to open the floor. If you guys have questions, go ahead and type them in and I will answer. And I know we kind of rushed through some things today, but we will have a lot more time in the coming weeks to sort of work on different body. Next week, we're going to work on hamstrings, which I know is a big one for a lot of people. Can you, okay. Can you roll out behind your knees? This one, I would not roll out right behind your knees just because there's a lot of tendons that attach back here. So the muscle does kind of travel through a little bit, but there are a lot of tendons that connect back here that are really sensitive. So if you're rolling out right behind your knees, you risk bruising those, and that does not feel good. So I would say if you want that, if that area right behind your knees is tight, you should go see a massage therapist that knows what they're doing. And actually just rolling out around the calves and then next week we'll talk about rolling out around the hamstrings, often helps with that area right behind the knee. Good question. Any other questions? No questions? How should we stretch to increase our range of motion safely? So good question. I would say actually the biggest thing that makes a difference in the safety of a stretch is whether you're warm before you stretch or not. So if you just go into a stretch right away cold, you're at greater risk for pulling a muscle. Whereas if you roll out beforehand, rolling out, first of all, it loosens up your muscles, but it also gets your blood flowing. So that kind of helps, I guess, make it a little bit safer because you're already a little bit warm going into the stretch. Also, stretching after class is a good idea because you're warm there too. Yeah. Any other questions? The muscle near the inside of your hip is tight. What might be making it so tight? That is a good one. It is also a complicated one. We're going to get to that a little bit more in the coming weeks. But if you're talking about this muscle on the inside, one thing that can be contributing to it is if you're rolling in, pronating, or if the calf on the inside is tight, or if this muscle close to the knee is tight, it can all be pulling it in and making it tight. The other thing that could be making it tight is if one of your outside muscles is really weak and this is compensating for it and gripping too hard. Yeah, so we'll talk about that a lot more next week. Once you're solid in your split and it does not hurt, how do you stretch it? So for this, you can start working into oversplits very gently. Just make sure you're not stretching like from the floor onto a foam roller right away. Maybe start with like one book or another book. But yeah, just gently increasing the level of your splits. That's gonna help stretch. And it looks like we are out of time. So if you have more questions, save them for next week. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will see you all on Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.